So, we're here to learn a little bit more about the candidates running for the role of Women's Representative for MNBC Region 1. Tonight we have two candidates. There's Terry or Tercier and Amelia or Mia Yule. I believe you both prefer to go by Terry and Mia. Is that correct? Great, sounds good. So I'll take a quick minute to introduce myself. My name is Melissa Hardy, and I'm the Client Project Manager with One Feather. I'm calling from Treaty 6 territory. I'm just west of Edmonton, about 20 minutes west of Edmonton in Alberta. I'm a member of the Métis Nation of Alberta, and I'm very excited to support MNBC's general election process this year. I'm joined by my colleague Delaney Barlow. Hi, Delaney. Hello. Delaney's going to be moderating the comments this evening, and she'll be pulling questions from over that space. Please note that she might edit your comments for clarity when she passes them along to me. Before we get started, I'd like to review the context for tonight's meeting. Patrick Harriott has been acclaimed as the Region 1 Director, which means that his position is unopposed. The youth representative for Region 1 remains vacant at this time. Our focus tonight will be on the women's representative role, which is important, of course, to all of us who are attending tonight. Our goal is for you, the voters, to have a chance to hear directly from our candidates, ask them some questions, and learn more about their platform, and of course, their vision and commitment representing the women of Region 1. I'd take a quick second to review the ground rules for this evening, but I have a feeling I don't really need to. Please keep all of your questions and comments curious and focused on the candidates' plans should they win their seat. We kindly ask that all of your questions are submitted through the chat feature through here on Zoom, and that you keep your microphone muted throughout the event, unless, of course, you're a candidate who's speaking. Each candidate will have a time limit for responses to their questions. I'll display the countdown, and there'll be a little signal to indicate the end of your time. Of course, if you finish early, that's absolutely fine. While we know everybody here cares very deeply about MNBC governance, any disruptive behavior could result in removal from the meeting to ensure productive and respectful conversation. I don't think that'll be an issue. With these guidelines in mind, let's turn to our candidates for their opening statements. Would you mind introducing yourselves and telling us a little bit about yourself? I'm going to invite Terry to begin.
Tanchi kakiao aoyak, Terry Tertier, Dishinikashun. Hello, everyone. My name is Terry Tertier. I respectfully acknowledge that I'm currently on Treaty 6 as well. Traditional lands of First Nations and Métis peoples in St. Albert. I'm on my way home from visiting friends and family in St. Albert. I've lived in Campbell River for 3 years, from Victoria after 32 years there. Since relocating, I've been exploring my Métis heritage, which is deeply rooted in my family history. Some of my family names include Anderson, McKay, Flavel, Dumont, Descheno, and Gladue. My mother, uncle, and their cousin began the investigations into their forgotten history and passed it on to us. My Métis heritage, inherited through my mother and her parents, includes Cree, Scottish, and French ancestry, with roots in places such as Swan River, Red River, James Bay, and Fort Alice, Northwest Territories. These ancestors were traders and trappers who traveled extensively in the Northwest. In the North Island Métis community, I'm learning and practicing my culture. I've engaged in many activities such as jigging, beading, weaving, sewing capotes, embroidery, fly tying, archery, geocaching, canning, learning self-defense, plant medicine, food security, and more. In our book club, we read books by Métis authors. They teach so much more about who I am and where I come from. I also participate in Métis gatherings such as Mamaway, Pitikwe, Lispas, Kakue, Chimichik, and Larb Kawachik. 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 I'm committed to learning more about our cultural background, and I'm focusing and improving my chief language skills. Marcy.
Thank you so much, Terry. Mia, I invite you to take 3 minutes to introduce yourself.
Tanse and Marcy to everybody who's joined tonight. My name is Mia Ewell. My pronouns are she and her, and I'm a Métis woman whose maternal family comes from Pigeon Lake, Alberta and Jasper, Alberta. My maternal family names include Fraser, Brazeau, Baudry, and Brabant. My paternal family is settler. They come from Scotland, Ireland, and England, and those family names include Ewell, Bruce, Mason, Bailey, and Reed. I'm a registered citizen of Métis Nation, BC, a community member of Métis Nation Greater Victoria and Cowichan Valley Métis Nation. My grandfather, Richard Larson, was always very connected to community and active. And through my connection to him, I've always been privileged to grow up connected to my Métis identity and participating as a community member. For about 18 years now, I've been connected to Métis Nation Greater Victoria. I've served on MNGV's board of directors as a youth rep quite some time ago. I'm almost 40, so no longer a youth. And I also served as a director at large for a short time. I'm a grateful but uninvited visitor in the territories of the Quw'utsun people in the Cowichan Valley, which I call home. Over the years, I've been fortunate to gain experience in a wide range of areas that I hope to utilize to benefit my community through the women's rep role. Some of that experience includes planning and facilitating Indigenous community engagement and working on collaborative projects together, learning, practicing, and sharing Métis material arts through my own learning, mentoring others, and coordinating learning opportunities for people in Métis community. This has been done through both professional roles and just volunteering my own time because it's something I'm very excited about. I've got some chartered community leadership experience. I mentioned I was on MNGV's board of directors previously. I've got extensive experience supporting First Nations, Métis, and Inuit children and youth in foster care. I've held a lot of different roles, including a youth worker at Island Métis for a couple of years. So I was very lucky to work with our kiddos there. And I also coordinated monthly cultural activities that I planned in collaboration with the youth. Through different roles, including as a family navigator with MNBC, I've become very experienced in advocacy and navigating different systems that our people intersect with. In my current role with the BC Public Service, I'm a senior policy analyst, and that's given me really good skills researching, analyzing, and developing policies. Through my degree and a lot of my experience, I've become quite experienced with technical skills like professional writing, project management, and working on collaborative projects. And I'm always excited to educate others about who Métis people are and what our rights are. And so, yeah, wherever I go, that's something I endeavor to do. And I think, as I mentioned, my grandpa was very active in using his voice, and that's something I've really taken from him, and I try to bring into every space I occupy. So thank you for listening.
Thank you so much, Mia. It's so nice to get to know both of you. So now for the next segment of our town hall, each of you will have 5 minutes to further expand on your campaign platforms. This is a chance to dive deeper into your plans and your priorities, and of course your vision for the role of women's representative for Region 1. Feel free to share the key issues that you're passionate about, whatever initiatives you hope to launch, and how you plan to make a difference for Métis women in your region. I'm going to go ahead and start with Mia. Mia, you have 5 minutes to share your campaign with us, and of course, if you're ready, the floor is yours.
Ooh, I'm gonna have to zip through a lot of things I get excited about. So there's many things I get excited about, but there's a few that are really close to my heart. So the first one is cultural knowledge reclamation and sharing. I'm particularly passionate about how our identity is woven into our material arts and about our collective reclamation of our ancestral practices. Over 15 years ago, I started seeking out knowledge keepers to learn some of these things, and I've been so lucky to learn things like beadwork, porcupine quill work, tufting, fish scale art, hide tanning. My teachers include Lisa Shepard, Joanna Young, Kaya Heitland, Mara Kersey, Lynette LaFontaine, Teresa Lewis, and Mara Kerr. I do feel that our material arts are a really important part of our identity, and you can see this in everything about us. I always joke that Métis people will beat anything that isn't nailed down. And at the rendezvous last weekend, you could see that. There was so much incredible beadwork and so much people had done themselves. And it's just so beautiful to witness that representation of our culture through art. I've also been taught that holding knowledge carries a responsibility to share it. As I mentioned, I'm very excited about creating access, low barrier access to folks in Métis community for that learning. And I think I mentioned already, I've used in different roles. I've mentored others and coordinated and facilitated workshops, also applied to grants to make sure that people get access to that kind of learning. So that'll always be something that's very close to my heart. A second piece that I get very excited about is identity, inclusion, and belonging to one another. In BC's political landscape right now, there are a lot of voices advocating for the exclusion of Métis people, and we're seeing very tangible impacts from this. Our voices are excluded from really important areas. We're seeing funding taken back. And those are concerning, but I worry more so about how these narratives impact our children, youth, and those people who are finding their ways back home to community. The history of Métis people in Canada has resulted in many people being disconnected or being unsure of how they fit into our community. And it's a story I've heard so many times, particularly working with kids in care. So that story of disconnection is one I hold close to my heart. And I do feel that we as a community, and particularly those in leadership, have a responsibility to find ways to wrap our people in support and to call them home. I do feel that one of the strongest acts of resistance we can practice as Indigenous people is to reclaim our kin and reclaim our ancestral knowledge and to support one another. And I've been so fortunate to be connected to different chartered communities, and I've just seen how beautiful that support and connection is. And so I get very excited to find ways to extend that out and to call people home. And I do believe that's a strong part of the role of Women's Rep, is to nurture those opportunities. And so the third priority is, of course, advocating for the intersectional needs of Métis women on Vancouver Island and Powell River. So I know that Métis women are strong, diverse, and resilient, and I see this throughout our community. I also know that we face unique challenges, and I feel that it's important that these are understood and we're supported with them. Many people are seeking cultural learning and connection. Many of us are impacted by the ongoing opioid crisis. Métis women are strong, but we still need mental health supports. Much work is needed to ensure that 2S LGBTQIA people have safe spaces and supports that they need. And we need the systems around us to understand who Métis people are so we can feel safe and supported when we access services and go into spaces. So these are some of the things I see, but I do believe it's really up to the Women's Rep position to hear from the Métis women themselves, to understand what those issues are, and to be able to uplift those voices and advocate for them. Go say hi, hi.
Thanks so much, Mia. Terry, it's your turn. You also have 5 minutes to share your campaign platform with us. The floor is
Mine
yours.
is short and sweet, just like my tenure in Métis Association. 3 years is not long. That was wonderful, Mia. I'd vote for you. In Campbell River, where I live, work, and play, I respectfully acknowledge the unceded traditional territory of Liwik's people, the YYK, the YYKum, Quika First Nations. As BT Women's representative, I want to promote community awareness of what's available and the purpose of the programs and services for Métis women, especially for our elders. I want to enhance communication with Métis women to identify their needs and priorities. It's important to listen to them. I must gather relevant information from MNBC, as well as effectively present Métis women's concerns to the Council. I want to promote regional community development by supporting projects, developing relationships, and ensuring Métis women are informed and empowered to participate in available initiatives. It's important to foster leadership within the Métis women's communities by encouraging participation in leadership roles, offering mentorship opportunities, and supporting initiatives that empower women to lead. As a retired government worker with experience in financial systems, I have a track record of being a team player as well as working independently and contributing to community projects in the North Island Métis community. My maturity, life experience, and knowledge, valuable assets that I'm eager to share with Métis Women BC. Marcy.
Thanks so much, Terry. Thank you both for your thoughts. At this point, I'd like to encourage all viewers to submit questions in the chat. Questions can be directed to one or both of our candidates this evening. While we wait for questions to come in, I have a few questions on the back burner to get us started. First one I'm going to float is, economic opportunities are vital for Métis women's empowerment. How do you plan to support Métis women in areas like employment, entrepreneurship, and financial independence? I'm going to go ahead and put that question in the chat so you can refer back to it later. I just need to find my chat button here. There we go. So the question once again is, economic opportunities are vital for Métis women's empowerment. How do you plan to support Métis women in areas like employment, entrepreneurship, and financial independence? Terry, you can have the floor first.
I need to meet up with each of the community women's representatives and get their ideas of what they want and what their ideas are. I know in Victoria, they aren't doing as many things as we are in North Island. So maybe finding resources for them to write up financial requests from the council, from the MNBC council, somebody who knows how to write excellent financial requests. That would be one step towards getting the money they need to do projects or training. That's it. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Terry. Mia, I invite you to share your response.
So I think my response would be similar to Terry's and similar to what I've said a few times now. It would be so important to connect with these communities and women in these communities themselves. I recognize that the economic opportunities for women in Powell River is going to look very different from those in Victoria. Through the Friendship Center in Victoria, there's like a lot of different resources and opportunity folks can access. Or if you're in the North Island, that's going to look really different too. And so I think it'll be really key for this role to be connected to those communities, to hear those voices and really understand what those unique challenges are or needs. In Victoria, there's BC Transit, so you could catch a bus to work, but that's going to be a lot harder in places like Sayward. And so I know I've said this before, but I think such a key part is just building those relationships and hearing from folks themselves what they would need. And, that such a key part of this role is in leadership, those who are making decisions about employment and training, entrepreneurship, financial independence are hearing those unique needs. I would also want to advocate to be included in some of those projects so that this role would be able to look at programs and plannings and initiatives and make sure those voices that you've heard are actually included and meaningfully represented in what's rolling out from there too. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Mia. I have a couple more questions that I have set aside for folks. And in the meantime, I do encourage people to participate with the chat. My next question I have see, I'm going to pull up my chat here and make sure I have it displayed. Which current MNBC programs would you like to see expanded? Do you have any programs that you would like to see implemented for your region? I'll go ahead and start with Mia, if that's okay.
Sure thing. It'll come as a surprise to nobody. I would love to see more opportunities for folks to engage in cultural learning. It would be really great to have women-specific opportunities, especially ones where we can gather across the region and come together, because I feel like often we have these opportunities within our chartered communities, but we've got so many relatives, all across Vancouver Island, Powell River. So it would be really great to see more opportunities to share that cultural knowledge, but also for all of us to connect across the region. I know so many folks are parents, and it's really important to see supports for them. Things like daycares, camps for kiddos, especially for families that have kids with support needs, making sure that they have access to the resources they need to be able to thrive. It's important to me to see more programs and supports for 2S LGBTQIA folks, and to really make sure that that is accessible, folks feel safe and supported wherever they are. Jigging is always great. It'd be really lovely to see more of that and how that could be tied into our community's wellness and health. And it would be really neat to see more knowledge transfer. Like some communities like North Island and like Métis Nation Greater Victoria have so many amazing things going on, and they've got these incredible knowledge keepers, and it would be so neat to create partnerships so we could bring that learning and how those programs are operating to other chartered communities, and just to be collectively raising one another up. I think mental health is a really important one. We have so many different supports, but as Métis people, we're impacted by a lot of different things, and we're strong and resilient. But as I said, we still need help, and it would really be great to see mental health supports expanded from MNBC. I always really believe in making sure that things are low barrier and accessible to folks. And so that could look like virtual things, that could look like finding gas vouchers so people can get to the supports they need. Housing is another really important one. I think everywhere we look in Canada, housing costs are just skyrocketing. And so housing is really crucial as well. And it's, one of those basic needs that folks need to have covered to be able to go out into the world and succeed and thrive and pursue their dreams. Goodness. Youth as well. I was so lucky to be involved in different youth events. And that was another big part of how I became connected to community. And so I would love to see those expanded and make sure that they're inclusive, and kiddos or youth from all the different charter communities are able to access these opportunities.
Thanks so much, Mia. There's a lot to talk about when we talk about programming. Terry, I invite you to take your 3 minutes to share your thoughts.
Well, I think Mia spoke about everything I would think about. The gathering together in communities is very important. Sharing the elders' knowledge, sharing each other's crafts and interests. I think that's very important. I'd like to see our language improved. The Michif language is very important to me. And using it on a daily or weekly basis is the only way we can get it to be part of our lives and maintain our Michif language. So I know in the North Island Métis, we're starting that at the end of this month. We've just gotten a notice about a chance to take some Michif language training. So I'm excited about that, and I'd like to be able to share that with everybody else. I like the idea of sharing our knowledge and between each one of our communities to make Vancouver Island Region 1 more powerful, more outspoken in MNBC Council. So we need to have strong leaders encourage and support our leaders. I was encouraged to put my name forward for this. And I kept saying, no, no, no. And they said, you know what? You've got some knowledge there and you would be good at this. That was encouragement from my group, from my community. And if we could do that to everybody in our community, just imagine what kind of leadership we'd have. That's what I'd like to implement in our region. Marcy.
Thanks so much, Terry. That actually brings me to a perfect segue to our next question, which is, how will you promote leadership for Métis women and youth, especially since our youth seat is vacant, and encourage the next generation to become involved in Métis governance? I'm going to go ahead and put that question in the chat here. Once again, the question is, how will you promote leadership and opportunities for Métis women and encourage the next generation to become involved in MNBC governance? If it's okay, I'm going to pass the microphone on to Mia. And I actually think I'm going to make the executive decision. I know 3 minutes has been our standard timeline, but we have plenty of time. So I'm going to go ahead and add a minute to that, and I'll give you each 4 minutes if that's okay. We've got lots of time.
Perfect. Thank you. Gosh, that is such a good question. And I'll echo Caitlin's comment. These are great questions. So thank you for having those ready. One of the things that I've been taught and I think about a lot is this responsibility we carry when we access certain spaces to create opportunity for others. And when I was a youth worker at Island Métis, I would involve the youth in program planning and, writing grant applications, things like that, so that they could be gaining that experience. And I think that's something we always need to be thinking about, is like how we're passing on those leadership skills to others in community, and especially those younger generations. And I think there's a lot of different opportunities to do that. And again, it really comes down to like what folks are wanting, what is important to them, how do they want to see themselves involved in leadership, and what would work for them. But I think that's something that we could learn more about through a relational approach, through connecting with the different communities and speaking to women from there. Maybe starting projects together and creating opportunities where women can lead them and get more of that leadership experience. And I'm always excited to support youth. And so wherever there's space to do that as well, to make sure that they're included in ways that they feel comfortable with, that they want to, and that kind of supports them to gain the experience they're looking for. And I know I was offered a lot of opportunities as a youth. I joined MNGB's board and I was so shy, but everybody believed in me. And that really helped me to like grow into this experience and grow into the community. And I really want to be able to offer that back. And I believe that we have a responsibility to do that. I think that's all. Thanks for the extra minute, but I guess I don't need it. Thank you.
Not a problem. I figure we're just so curious about both of your thoughts. It's always nice to add a little extra time. Terry, I invite you to share your response.
I would like to see relationships developed in the communities during simple things like maybe an elders' coffee clutch, where the elders would talk to each other and encourage each other. There's no reason why the elders can't be leaders as well. They may have been leaders in the past, and maybe they would be really good ones too. But to encourage younger ones, I would ask them to volunteer. Volunteering is the first step of getting experience to be a leader. Then it's a safe environment. They've got support and experienced people around them. There's no pressure. Volunteering is easy to do. I did that this spring with I became the Kukum Terry for the 8 to 12-year-olds during spring break camp. And that volunteer that I did really encouraged me to meet up with these young kids. And now they call me Kookum when they see me. That's what they know me. And seeing other communities, meeting up with other people in the communities, having a one-to-one relationship with them, and encouraging them on a personal basis. Like I say, maybe volunteering would be their first step. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Terry. I see that there's been some questions submitted. That's great. I am going to leave that to Delaney to moderate there. I have another question on the back burner here. How do you plan to address issues related to food security? And what steps do you plan to take to promote food sovereignty among Métis women and their families? I'll give you a moment to gather your thoughts, and I'll invite Mia to start.
Oh my goodness, so many great questions, and I feel like I'm excited about everything. But food security is one that I'm excited about also. I was lucky to grow up very close to the land. Um, I was fishing, harvesting oysters off the beach. My dad had a giant garden, and so we're eating squash and carrots and things we harvested from there. I hunt every year, and if I'm lucky, I get some deer and fill my freezer. Um, yeah, so food security is something I think a lot about. And I know depending on folks' location and maybe their access to resources, food security is going to look very different. So in urban environments, if folks don't have access to go hunting like I do, that could look like supporting folks with gardens. Even if you've got a little patch of dirt in your backyard, there's a lot you can grow. MNBC had this really wonderful program, and hopefully everybody was able to participate in it, where there's information about gardening. There was gift cards for seeds and a lot of support around that. And so I would be very excited about finding ways to encourage people to be self-sufficient. And so gardening would be one. Also finding ways to offer programs for folks to get their PAL and their core so they could go out hunting if that was something they're interested in too. Looking into teaching folks how to fish and get their fishing license too. Our community, such a big part of our culture is being close to the land, and we get so much from the land, our food, our medicines. But I think particularly in urban environments, folks need more support to be able to access that and to know how they can harvest food and where they can harvest food from. Anybody that knows me well knows I'm a very giant nerd about mushrooms. I pick edible mushrooms every fall. And so that's another really neat food source. Or there's berries as well. And so, yeah, I think in terms of addressing food security, we really need to find ways to equip people with the knowledge to be more self-sufficient, to have the tools to create some of their own food. Another thing I was thinking about is community kitchens. I was very lucky to work at Saanich Neighborhood Place in Victoria. And they did all these amazing meal programs for low-income families. We would have nights where everybody cooked together and they got to bring home a whole bunch of food, meals for their kiddos. And that was such a nice way to have community together to learn food skills and also to bring food home for the and then I know I say this for like every question, but I think it's really important to connect with women in chartered communities and see what their needs are, and what would be important to them in terms of that. So thank you for listening.
Thanks so much, Mia. Terry, I invite you to take the floor.
Well, everything that Mia said is everything I was thinking. My notes say community gardens, preserving foods, trips to the country and the forests, and connect with people. Those are my notes. So Mia, ditto. Thank you.
Excellent. It seems like there's some really big ideas that everybody's very passionate about. It's great to hear. Next question I have is, this was based off of Caitlin's question. Knowing the diverse background of the women in Region 1, what methods do you plan to use to engage with the folks that you are serving? So I'll put that into the chat here. I'm just going to put in the chat before I invite. Okay, so once again, the question is, knowing the diverse background of the women in Region 1, what methods do you plan to use to engage with the women in your region? Terry, I'll invite you to go ahead and get us started.
The first thing I wrote down is travel. I'm a big traveler. I would like to travel to each one of these communities, asking the community women rep to organize a gathering so we could meet face to face and talk one-on-one. Group meetings, they can ask me how I can help them, and I can take all their ideas with me to MNBC. I want to travel. I want to be able to go and meet all these women. There's so many, and there's so many kinds of women in these groups. Powell River is totally different than Victoria. North Island will be so different than Port Alberni. So that's what I would like to do, to travel and talk face to face. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Terry. Mia, I invite you to take the floor.
Thank you. I love that, Terry. And I think it's so important that in-person connection. And, you know, it's very convenient that we have this virtual world and we're all joining from our respective locations right now. But there definitely is something to being able to see each other in person, to hug and laugh, have those big anti-laughs and bead together. So I feel like a broken record with my response, but I do feel like much of this should be informed by Métis women themselves. You know, I would want to be asking, like, how do you want to engage and connect? What makes it easier for you to connect? How do you feel heard in this process? And how can the women's rep best serve you? I know I've highlighted throughout this conversation that I'm very excited about knowledge sharing. And so my hope would be to visit communities, to sit and do beadwork and share tea and talk, and to kind of learn more about what the women in the regions would like and what is important to them. But that's my view, you know, the tea and beadwork and visiting, and the women in the regions really would be the guiding force for what that looks like. And of course, if it worked for folks, like, we would be able to use this virtual environment. I know it really helps with accessibility. While it is nice to see each other in person, if folks aren't able to travel, or there's maybe like health concerns with gathering in large crowds, or they don't have childcare, this does really help with accessibility. And so, yeah, there are many different ways that I would seek to connect with women in the regions, but really it would be up to them to let me know what they wanted and what worked.
Thanks so much, Mia. Our next question piggybacks off of the one we just had, which is more specific, pardon my dogs, which is more specific to folks living with disabilities. How do you plan to engage and support with members who are living with disabilities? I'm just going to put that in chat here for everybody. How do you plan to engage with and support members who are living with disabilities? I'm going to invite Terry to go ahead and get us started.
I would have to find out from each community, women, how they communicate with people in their community. Do they have, say, maybe they have a ride share that they do to bring people together in their community? Maybe they have someone who goes out to the homes and visits them there. Community is so important. And each person who's living with a disability has their own problems. So again, I would have to connect directly with the women in each community to find out their method of meeting. They know their community, they know the people they're living with and what problems they have to deal with. So I would have to engage with the community to find out how they communicate. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Terry. Mia, I invite you to share your thoughts.
Thank you. I think like Terry and I have both said a number of times, it's really important to hear from folks what works for them. But I think there are really important considerations we should build in when we're connecting with members who might be living with a disability. And that could include if we're gathering in a physical place, making sure that that is accessible. If we have folks who require ASL, that we have funding to find interpreters so that they can engage. If there are folks who benefit from having certain fonts or documents prepared in a certain way to make it accessible, there are a lot of different layers. And I think it's important to consider to make sure that when we reach out or the opportunities we offer are equitable and accessible to all women throughout the chartered communities. And, you know, there's many things I can think of, but it's really important to hear from folks themselves because there's sometimes things that we just can't imagine. And so again, it's that highlighting that importance of having relationships, of talking to people and hearing, you know, what do you need? What do you want? What works for you? And how can I do that? I would also add, as a neurodiverse person myself, low stimulation environment would be amazing. I love setting. I feel like that's certainly a perspective I bring and can appreciate as, you know, I engage with folks and do planning. That's just like another area, but really we truly need to talk to folks to understand what they need because all of our experiences are so different and so diverse and unique.
Great. Thank you so much, Mia. The next question I have, I'm about to share in chat here. How will you advocate for improved K-12 education outcomes for Métis students? And what initiatives would you support to ensure that Métis culture, language, and history are better integrated into the school system? This is a big one. I think perhaps maybe even 5 minutes makes more sense because this is a big topic that I know affects a lot of folks. So, Mia, I'll invite you to get us started. I'm going to give you 5 minutes for this one.
This is an exciting one. And I don't have much experience related to education, but there's a lot of things that come to mind. I think about the importance of being seen and having that sense of belonging for Métis students in the schools. And that could look like having Métis support workers. A couple of years back, I partnered with Jesse Campbell and we went to 3 different schools in the Victoria School District. And with the students, he created these Métis murals. And I just did more of the nerdy back-end project management stuff. But really the intention there was to have this visual representation for Métis students. So when they came to school, they could see like, hey, I'm represented here. I belong. I'm seen and understood as a Métis person. And so I think just like that visual aspect is a really important thing. I think having supports, like if there is an opportunity to have Métis specific supports, I think education is really key. A lot of people don't seem to know who we are as Métis people or what it means to be Métis. And it would be really neat to incorporate that into the learning of the folks who are, spending that time with our kids every day. If there's ways to co-develop learning opportunities for teachers and faculty in schools if there's an opportunity to work with the school districts and make sure they understand who Métis people are and how that can be involved. If there's an opportunity to contribute to curriculum, so we're not just supporting those Métis students, but uplifting a greater understanding of who we are. Gosh. It would be really neat to have some of those learning opportunities in the school. I'm seeing in the question, we're talking about culture, language, and history. And those could be incorporated into curriculum as well, not just for Métis students, but for all the students to learn about and to really appreciate what a rich, vibrant, beautiful community we have. I think that's probably all I have to say. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Mia. Terry, I'm also going to give you a full 5 minutes to share your thoughts.
Oh, I'm not going to need 5 minutes.
Right.
I would like to see literature, more books written by Métis women brought into the schools. And this volunteer situation, I'd see people go into classrooms to teach anybody interested. It doesn't have to be just Métis children, but any of the students interested in learning beading or loom weaving or our Métis culture ideas, the bison and the trees that have families, and those kind of education things brought into the schools as being, maybe they aren't part of the curriculum now, but maybe together with MNBC, we'd be able to finance people to go into the classrooms and like you said, Mia, educate everybody on what Métis is all about. Language history, why not teach the Michif language as part of the language? Why not part of the literature in the schools? But do we need financing for that, or do we need to go to the school boards and promote that? Is it up to the Métis women rep for the region to do that? Maybe it is. So that's something to check into. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Terry. Let's see, I have another question lined up in chat here. The question is, with housing insecurity affecting and impacting meaningful ongoing connections with community, how do you promote women's Métis community connections through their lifespan? Let me just repeat that one. I think I jumbled the words a little bit. With housing insecurity continuing to impact meaningful ongoing connections with community, how will you promote women's community connections throughout their lifespan? Terry, I'll invite you to go ahead and get us started if you're ready.
Have you put that into the...
Just dropped it in there.
Oh, there it is. The housing insecurity continuing to impact meaningful ongoing connections. Is that one? How will you promote women's Métis community connections throughout their lifespan? Oh, I don't know. How would you meet in groups? Meet all the women, Métis women in your community. Meet once a month at least to talk about what issues women have in the Métis community. Everybody has different issues. Say you need childcare. Say you're senior and you need to change your home. Maybe you're poor and you can't afford food. So we need to meet up with the women in our community and continue that on a monthly basis. People come to rely on meetings monthly. I know I do in our community. Thank you.
Thank you, Terry. Mia, I invite you to share your thoughts.
So many great questions. Gosh, I think it'll be a similar answer to some of the things that I've said before. But I think it's really important to understand where folks are coming from and to be able to meet them where they're at. And so some people might be well resourced and not have a lot of stressors, and they'll be able to easily access community events. But we want to make sure that we're really pulling everybody into community. And so it would be important to think about the ways that we can do that. So perhaps with housing security issues, folks are a little more stressed and concerned about where they're going to live and what that will look like. And they don't have the time to come to a community event. Maybe we can be sending beading kits out to them, or medicines, or resources. Maybe we can be having virtual events because that is what is accessible to them at that moment. I think it would be important to work or to connect to the Métis service agencies like Island Métis, because they have such a strong understanding of what our community members are facing, particularly those who are vulnerable and struggling. And so they would have great insight into how we could be supporting and including folks who might be facing housing security challenges and other challenges. Youth, and I see this question talks about, throughout the lifespan. And I think it's important to be inclusive of the youth, of women. We're all in this together, and we have a really beautiful community. And so every opportunity there is to connect us in the ways that work for us individually. I'm excited for that. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Mia. Appreciate your thoughts. I'm just going to take a moment to invite folks to participate once again and provide some questions. Oh, I do see some that have come through. That's great. Let's see. All right, so I'm going to take a moment and allow Delaney to go through the comments. And if there's any more comments or questions folks would like to share, please feel free to add those into the chat at this time. While we're waiting for that to get sorted out, I want to remind everybody that this town hall will be available for viewing on the MNBC YouTube channel in the next few days. If you'd like to revisit any part of the discussion, or if you know others who couldn't attend but would benefit from watching, please let them know and keep an eye out for the posting. Also a reminder about voting. Mail-in ballots are due back to One Feather by September 7th, 2024. And electronic voting, which is the most accessible way for most people to vote, will open on August 24th and will close on September 7th at 8 p.m. Pacific time. I'm just going to give it another minute while we go through the comments here, and we'll have another question for you shortly. I see one that's quite direct and I think would be a great place to start. Do you have any thoughts on how you might be able to support youth who are aging out of government care? I'm going to go ahead and invite Mia to start us off with that one.
Thank you. I know I mentioned this before, but worked for quite a number of years supporting Indigenous children and youth in care. And so this is a topic very close to my heart and one that I get excited about. And I know that our systems are not well set up to support youth aging out of care. And it's something that we very much need to improve on. Our kiddos turn 19, but that doesn't mean they're magically equipped to exist in the world by themselves. And there have been some important changes in the supports that come from government. but I think it's really important to be connected to our chartered communities, for the organizations and folks who are supporting our young people aging out of care to be having those conversations with charter communities and working in collaboration to see how best to support these kiddos. Sometimes when they're in care, they haven't been connected to their families. They don't necessarily know what it means to be Métis. And they may not know that they've got this rich, vibrant community that is there advocating for them and loves them and welcomes them with open arms. And so I think it's really key for the programs and people who are wrapped around our kiddos in care and aging out of care to be working in collaboration with Métis community, with MNBC, with the women's reps, and really coming up with a thoughtful approach of how best to wrap these kiddos in support as they kind of move forward into adulthood. I know the experience of being in care is one that doesn't leave them free from trauma. They need supports, and that doesn't end the day they turn 19. They continue to need mental health supports, counseling, ways to find that spiritual wellness. That connection is so key to community. And so finding opportunities for them to connect and to feel that sense of belonging and identity and understanding who they are as Métis people. I think it's important as well to find those economic opportunities for them to pursue their dreams, whether that's post-secondary, if there's certain jobs they want to get into. And I think our community aunties are these superheroes. And it's so important to have that connection to aunties and that connection to community and, those folks who are your cheerleaders. And, as the aunties, even if we haven't met these youth, we're still rooting for you. We still want the best for you. And so, yeah, I think it really comes down to making sure these kids are connected to their communities, and having that collaborative approach with chartered communities, with MNBC, and with whatever organizations or systems are supporting our young people as they age out of care. I think that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Mia. Terry, I invite you to share your thoughts.
Mia, your thoughts are so complete. There's not much I can add to it. I would maybe suggest that we look at getting mentors, personal mentors. So we know who's coming up age. These are women who, or maybe they're not women, maybe they're young fellows too, but they still need mentors. So we can get the men to mentor the guys, get them to teach them how to craft, to respect women, to honor the elders. The mentors have such a big role in our Métis community. That's the only thing I would add. You know more about the youth aging out than I do. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Terry. Okay, I see another question here. Aside from current initiatives, how will you encourage the women, how will the women leading MNBC ensure that our youth are being offered opportunities to grow into proud Métis citizens? I'm going to go ahead and place this in the chat, and I'll repeat myself because I think I stumbled over my words again. So the question was, aside from current initiatives, how will the women leading MNBC ensure that our youth are being offered opportunities to grow into proud citizens? Terry, I'd like to invite you to go first today, this time.
How will the women leading MNBC ensure that our youth are being offered opportunities to grow into? Oh boy. We need to have the youth join our society, join our communities. We need to have the youth included with women, BC, is it 18 or is it 19? I don't know. They're women. And they should be included in what we do, whether it's starting to bead, whether it's having coffee and tea and chat while we're beading. We must encourage these young folks to join us. They can learn just like we are learning, just like I'm learning. In my 3 years of being with the Métis, I've learned quite a bit reading the books and listening to the ladies talk. And as Mia said, aunties, these are all aunties. And we've got to get these young folks into that group with us. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Terry. Mia, I invite you to share your thoughts.
Thank you. I loved what you were saying, Terry, about making sure the youth are invited into those spaces alongside us. And I think that's so important. I had shared earlier that, when I was a little youth in MNGV, I had so many wonderful people around me, so welcoming and so encouraging. And I got to sit on the board of directors as a youth rep. I got to write grant applications and, facilitate projects and do all these things. And it was because there was these aunties around me that believed in me and supported me. And I think, as we get to be women, we have that responsibility to continue offering that down and, to make sure that our youth are included, their voices are heard, that they know that they're seen and important and loved, that we strive to make opportunities for them and include them, and if there's things that are important, like how do we bring that into being and how do we make sure that the leadership in our community is hearing that and what they want. Gosh, what else? As I've said so many times, like I really do believe that our material arts are such a important part of our identity and our culture and how we connect. And so, I'm always excited about initiatives where we can connect in that way. And, so if that's making sure that, youth are included in women retreats where we're learning about tufting or fish scale art or hide tanning or something like that, just, making sure that we're thinking of everybody as we move along these processes and being inclusive and, truly being a community. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mia. I think we have time for one more question before I invite you guys to finalize your platform this evening. So the last question, I'm just going to pull it up from the chat here. Any ideas of how you might approach solutions for loneliness, especially across the lifespan when we think about our elders and our young people and everybody in between? Terry, I'll invite you to get us started.
Since I'm an elder, the best thing for me is to combat loneliness is to get active. I've got to get active with my community, to get active physically, get out, meet people. Now, maybe if you're not able to be in big groups, that's okay. You can do one-on-ones, maybe get to know your neighbor, get to your coffee groups with your Métis sisters and stay active in the Métis volunteering, become a leader on one little thing and be really good at that one little thing and do it for the rest of your life. I think that would work. That's going to work for me. It's been working for me. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Terry. Mia, I invite you to share your thoughts.
Thank you. This is such an interesting question, and I've thought so much about how our ongoing relocation or like the disruption to our shared land ties has resulted in so many of us being in BC now and kind of spread out across the land, and how that kind of like fractured location impacts the like kinship ties and the organic knowledge sharing that would have occurred otherwise. And this urban environment we find ourselves in now, And it's so interesting to think about that loneliness, for all of our community members across their lifespan, and how we can be supporting folks. And I think we have to be creative in this urban environment because, we're not next door to each other. We're not going out berry picking, or hunting together necessarily, though I'd love to. And there's lots of really great things that communities are already doing. When I moved to the Cowichan Valley, I attended a hide tanning workshop with Cowichan Valley Métis, and I felt so welcome and so connected right away, just welcome with open arms. And I think those community events are so key for creating that sense of belonging, that connection, and like addressing that loneliness that folks might experience. And like I've said before, I think it's really important to understand that we all have different ways of showing up and different needs. And so it's important to really have a considerate lens to what will work for different folks. What might work for me might not work for you. And so when we create those opportunities for connection and belonging, how are we really looking at everybody's needs and being inclusive? So maybe that's a nature walk. Maybe that's getting together and doing beadwork. Maybe we go out fishing together, or maybe that looks like virtual beading circles once a month. I think, like I've said so many times, and like Terry said so many times, like it's really important to talk to folks and to learn what works for them and what they want. But yeah, there's many different ways we could approach that loneliness. And I know in Victoria, there's been so many great initiatives for little ones too. So really looking at the beginning of that lifespan and creating that connection. There's Métis specific daycares. I hear that they're making ribbon skirts and jigging and learning mischief. And it is so heartwarming and incredible to know that our little ones get to grow up in that environment, like really knowing who they are and not having that disconnection. And I think seeing what communities are doing, like we can see that precedent being set and that models that we can kind of look to implement in other communities. In different communities, there's really strong women's groups or beading circles, and that's another really.
Thanks so much, Mia. That's a big topic to chat about, and I know that there's a lot of thoughts there. So 3 minutes isn't always enough time. But with that, we are about to close up for the evening, and there's an opportunity for you to share further thoughts there. So, as we're approaching the end of the town hall, I'd like to give each of the candidates 5 minutes to share their closing thoughts. This is an opportunity to leave us with any final reflections, key messages, or thoughts you'd like the community to take away from tonight. Terry, I'll invite you to go ahead and get us started if you're ready.
Sure. In one of my earliest gatherings with the North Island community, I was deeply moved by the realization the Métis women and those who identify as women hold the power to become anything they aspire to be, whether that's a mother, teacher, hunter-gatherer, warrior, record keeper, or leader. By volunteering, we make it so. It would be an honor to represent Métis Women BC in Region 1, advocating for your concerns and ideas at the MNBC Council. I would consider it a true privilege to amplify our region's voice and work towards our shared goals. I encourage each of you to contribute in whatever way you can to support our community and its leaders. Marcy.
Thank you so much, Terry. Short and sweet. May I invite you to take the stage?
I think I'll also be short and sweet. I just wanted to express my deep gratitude to everybody for coming and sharing this space with us tonight. It was so great to talk about these important topics. I loved all the questions. With the last one, obviously I got excited, cut off by the timer. I was nervous about what this would be like because I've never been in this political space before, but I'm very grateful that it was a nice space. Everybody's so kind and lovely. Yeah, it was great to have the opportunity to share a little bit more about my experience and my values, what I hope, this role could do. And thank you so much for taking the time to be here tonight to connect with the candidates. And thank you also to One Feather for supporting this town hall. Hi, Marcy.
Thank you so much, Mia. Thank you, Terry. Thank you both for being here tonight and for sharing your vision for the Métis women of Region 1. Running for office requires courage, passion, and a willingness to be vulnerable in front of your community. And we appreciate your commitment to stepping up as leaders and advocates for Métis women. For our audience, of course, thank you so much for your engagement and participation tonight. And we hope the discussion has left you feeling more informed about the candidates and the role that they're running for. Thank you again for being part of this event, and get out there and vote. We're so excited to see those ballots coming back to our offices and see the turnout online. We're really excited about it all. Have a great evening, everybody.
Thank you.